The blood on my hands wasn't real, but the rage burning through my chest was. I stood in the bathroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel, scrubbing red paint from my palms while 300 people applauded my husband in the ballroom below. The paint had come from the portfolio I'd just destroyed in the parking garage. The one containing my dead brother's original designs. The ones David was about to claim as his own on the biggest stage of his career. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for being part of this incredible journey. If you're enjoying these stories of empowerment, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us build this amazing community. Let's dive in. I watched the red water swirl down the drain, each circle a year of lies, each drop a stolen dream. 7 years ago, my brother Ethan died in a motorcycle accident 3 days before his thesis defense at MIT. He was 26, brilliant, and on the verge of revolutionizing sustainable architecture. I was 23, drowning in grief, and too shattered to understand what I was giving away when I let David help me sort through Ethan's belongings. The paper towel turned pink in my hands. My reflection in the mirror showed a woman I barely recognized anymore. Designer dress, perfectly styled hair, diamond earrings that cost more than Ethan's entire student debt. I looked like success. I looked like a woman who had everything. I looked like a lie. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Riley. "Are you okay? You've been gone 20 minutes. David's about to give his speech. Perfect timing." I typed back, "Coming now. Don't miss this." The ballroom doors opened to a wave of sound. The National Architecture Foundation's annual Excellence Awards was the industry's Oscar night. Crystal chandeliers, tables draped in white silk, and a room full of people who believed they were witnessing greatness. The massive projection screen behind the stage displayed David's face, confident and charming, with the words, "Innovator of the Year," gleaming beneath. I slipped into my seat at table 3, right up front. Riley grabbed my arm, her eyes worried. "Where were you? You look pale." "Needed air," I whispered. "I'm fine now." David stood at the podium, his hand resting on the glass trophy shaped like a building. His smile was the same one that had made me fall in love with him 9 years ago, back when he was a struggling junior architect and I was a college student mourning her brother. He'd been kind then, or I'd thought he was kind. He'd held me while I cried, helped me pack up Ethan's apartment, told me everything would be okay. He'd also stolen every single design from Ethan's computer. "Thank you," David's voice boomed through the speakers. "This recognition means everything to me. When I first conceived the ecosphere concept 5 years ago, I knew I was onto something special, but I never imagined it would change the industry like this." My fingernails dug into my palms. Ecosphere. The revolutionary sustainable housing design that had made David a celebrity architect. The project that brought him $1 million contracts, magazine covers, and now this award. The design that my brother had called Project Phoenix in his notebooks. His attempt to create affordable, eco-friendly housing that could rise from the ashes of environmental disaster. I'd found out 6 months ago, purely by accident. I'd been cleaning out our garage when I discovered a box labeled Office Archive 2018. Inside were printouts, USB drives, and a folder marked E.M. Reference materials. Ethan Mitchell, my brother's initials. My hands had shaken as I opened the files. Every single design, every calculation, every innovation that had made David famous. All in Ethan's handwriting, dated 3 years before David claimed to have conceived them. The USB drives contained the original CAD files, time-stamped and watermarked with Ethan's student ID number. There were even voice memos of Ethan explaining his concepts, his excited voice talking about angles and sustainability coefficients, and how this could help millions of people. I'd listened to my dead brother's voice for 6 hours straight that night, sitting on the cold garage floor, understanding for the first time the magnitude of what David had stolen. Not just designs, not just ideas. He'd stolen Ethan's legacy. He'd stolen my brother's dream of making the world better. He'd stolen 7 years of credit, of recognition, of everything Ethan had worked his entire short life to achieve. And he'd done it while holding me at night, while promising to love and protect me, while building a marriage on the foundation of my grief and his theft. The ecosphere concept represents more than just architecture, David continued, his voice full of practiced passion. It represents a future where we can house millions sustainably, affordably, and beautifully. Tonight, I'm honored to announce that ecosphere communities are breaking ground in 15 cities worldwide. Applause erupted. I watched David's mentor, the legendary architect Richard Hastings, stand and clap. I watched the CEOs of construction firms rise to their feet. I watched Riley beside me, tears in her eyes because she thought this was a beautiful moment, because she didn't know that the man on stage had built his empire on a dead man's genius. No one knew. Not Riley. Not my parents, who lived 3,000 miles away in Portland, still too broken by Ethan's death to pay attention to architecture news. Not David's colleagues or friends or the hundreds of people in this room treating him like a visionary. Only I knew. And soon, everyone else would too. I couldn't have done this without support, David said, his eyes finding mine in the crowd. My beautiful wife, Maya, has been my rock through everything. Honey, stand up. Let them see you. The spotlight swung to me. 300 pairs of eyes turned my direction. I stood slowly, letting them see the dress David had bought me, the smile I'd practiced in the mirror, the image of the supportive wife. I waved slightly, playing the role I'd perfected over 9 years of marriage. David blew me a kiss. She believed in me when no one else did. The irony was crushing. I had believed in him. I'd believed in his kindness, his talent, his integrity. I'd married him thinking he was helping me honor Ethan's memory, never knowing he was profiting from it. I sat back down as David launched into the technical details of Ecosphere, explaining the innovations that made it revolutionary. Every word was Ethan's. Every concept, every solution to problems that traditional architecture couldn't solve. My brother's voice echoed in my memory from those recordings. If we shift the solar panel integration here and adjust the water recycling system like this, we can reduce construction costs by 40% while increasing efficiency by 60%. David said almost the exact same words now, to thunderous applause. Riley leaned over. Are you crying? Maya, this is such a beautiful moment. I touched my cheek, surprised to find tears there. Happy tears. I lied. Just very proud. But they weren't happy tears. They were tears of rage so pure it felt like acid in my veins. For 6 months, I'd been planning this moment. 6 months of secretly consulting lawyers, of gathering evidence, of building an airtight case. 6 months of pretending everything was fine while my husband paraded around stealing credit for my brother's life work. The lawyers had been clear. This was complicated. Ethan's work had been academic, never patented. David had been careful, changing just enough details to make direct plagiarism hard to prove. A lawsuit could take years and might not succeed. The court of public opinion, though, was different. The court of public opinion was immediate, brutal, and in an industry built on reputation, potentially devastating. That's why I'd spent 6 months, not just gathering Ethan's original files, but building something more powerful. A presentation that would prove, beyond any doubt, that every major innovation in Ecosphere existed in Ethan's work first. Side-by-side comparisons, time-stamped files, video recordings of Ethan presenting his concepts to his thesis committee, and the final piece, the one that had taken me 3 months to track down. Testimony from 2 of Ethan's former classmates who remembered David attending Ethan's presentations, who remembered him asking detailed questions, who'd thought at the time he was just being a supportive boyfriend's friend. He'd been scouting material to steal. David's speech was winding down. As I look to the future, I see unlimited potential for Ecosphere to grow and evolve. I've already begun work on the next generation of designs, incorporating even more revolutionary concepts. More of Ethan's concepts. I'd found those too, in a folder labeled Phase 2, on that same USB drive. David was planning to milk my brother's genius for years to come. Before I close, David said, his smile widening, I have a special surprise. I'd like to invite someone very important to the stage. Richard Hastings, my mentor and the founder of modern sustainable architecture, has agreed to partner with me on the next phase of Ecosphere. Richard, please join me. The room exploded with excitement. Richard Hastings was architecture royalty, a man who rarely collaborated with anyone. This was huge news, the kind of partnership that would cement David's reputation forever. The 2 men embraced on stage, flashbulbs popping, and I watched my husband's greatest moment unfold, knowing I was about to destroy it. Riley grabbed my hand. Oh my God, Maya. This is incredible. Do you know what this means for David's career? I know exactly what it means, I said quietly. The projection screen behind them changed, showing artistic renderings of future Ecosphere developments. Beautiful, innovative, sustainable communities that would never exist because they were built on stolen foundations. David and Richard stood together, taking in the applause, 2 men at the pinnacle of their profession. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Package delivered. Check under your seat. My heart rate spiked. I reached beneath my chair and felt a small envelope taped there. I pulled it free carefully, opening it in my lap. Inside was a USB drive and a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. Everything you need. The truth always surfaces. A friend of E. M. My hands shook. This wasn't part of my plan. Who was this? What did they know? And now, David's voice rang out. I'd love to take questions from the audience. I know many of you are curious about the technical aspects of ecosphere. Hands shot up around the room. David pointed to a man in the back, a journalist from Architecture Monthly. Yes, Thomas? David, there's been some speculation about the origins of your design philosophy. Can you talk about your influences and what inspired the core concepts of ecosphere? It was a softball question. An easy opportunity for David to wax poetic about his creative process. Instead, something flickered across his face. Uncertainty. His eyes swept the room and landed on me. For just a second, I saw fear there. Did he know? Had he somehow found out what I was planning? My influences are varied, David said carefully. I drew from many sources, years of research and development. But surely there was a eureka moment, Thomas pressed. A point where the concept crystallized. David's jaw tightened. Innovation is rarely a single moment. It's a process, an evolution of ideas over time. I felt Riley stiffen beside me. She was a journalist, too, and David's evasiveness had caught her attention. That's a weird answer, she whispered. He usually loves talking about his creative process. Another hand went up, this time from a woman I recognized. Professor Linda Chen from MIT, one of the judges for this year's awards. David, I have to ask. Your design philosophy shows remarkable similarity to some academic work I've seen from MIT students over the years. Have you collaborated with university research programs? The room suddenly felt colder. David's smile was frozen in place. I've consulted with various academic institutions. Yes. MIT has a wonderful architecture program. Specifically, Professor Chen continued, her voice sharp, I'm reminded of work from about 7 years ago. A thesis project that was never completed due to the student's tragic death. The similarities are quite striking. Time seemed to stop. I couldn't breathe. How did she know? Had someone else figured it out? David's face had gone pale. I'm not familiar with what you're referring to, Professor. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. The student's name was Ethan Mitchell, Professor Chen said, standing now. Every eye in the room turned to her. He died 3 days before his defense. His work was revolutionary, particularly his concepts for sustainable housing integration. I was on his thesis committee. I remember it very clearly. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. I felt hundreds of eyes turn toward me, putting together the pieces. Mitchell. Maya Mitchell. Before I married and became Maya Winters. Ethan Mitchell's sister. David's eyes found mine across the room. And in them I saw panic, calculation, and then something worse. Accusation. As if I had somehow orchestrated this moment, but I hadn't. Professor Chen wasn't part of my plan. The mysterious USB drive wasn't part of my plan. Something else was happening here. Something bigger than my carefully laid preparation. Riley's hand tightened on my arm. Maya? Was that your brother? Your brother who died? I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. I was supposed to be in control. I was supposed to present my evidence calmly, methodically, during the reception when people were relaxed and receptive. This was chaos. Richard Hastings had stepped forward, his hand on David's shoulder. I think there's been a misunderstanding here. David's work with Ecosphere has been thoroughly documented and reviewed. The timeline is clear. Is it? Another voice. This time from the back of the room. A man stood, tall and lean with graying hair. I didn't recognize him. Because I have documentation that suggests otherwise. I'm Thomas Garrett. I was Ethan Mitchell's academic advisor at MIT. I've been watching Ecosphere's development with great interest and increasing concern for the past 5 years. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Who were these people? How did they know? David's microphone crackled as he gripped it too tightly. This is ridiculous. These accusations are baseless and frankly insulting. I've spent years developing Ecosphere, using designs you took from a dead student's computer. Professor Chen's voice cut through his protests. I've kept copies of Ethan Mitchell's thesis drafts. I've compared them to your work, Mr. Winters. The similarities aren't coincidental. They're identical. The room erupted. Voices overlapping, people standing, cameras flashing. I sat frozen in my seat, watching my husband's world implode on live television. Because yes, this ceremony was being broadcast to architecture schools and firms worldwide. But this wasn't my doing. Not exactly. I'd planned exposure, but private, controlled. This was public execution. David's eyes locked on mine through the chaos. His expression was pure hatred. He thought I'd orchestrated this, brought these people here, planned this public humiliation. He thought this was my revenge. He was wrong. This was something else entirely. Riley pulled at my arm. Maya, we need to get you out of here. The press is going to swarm you. She was right. Already I could see journalists pushing toward our table, cameras lifting, phones recording. But I couldn't move. I was transfixed by the sight of David on stage, his award still in his hand, his career disintegrating in real time as Richard Hastings stepped away from him, as colleagues whispered and pointed, as security began moving toward the stage. Then David did something I didn't expect. He raised his hand, calling for silence. Somehow, impossibly, the room quieted. Every eye turned back to him. You want the truth? His voice was sharp, bitter. Fine. Yes, I used Ethan Mitchell's work. He was dead. His brilliant ideas were going to rot in some university archive, while people continued living in unsustainable, expensive housing. I brought his vision to life. I made it real. Without me, ecosphere would have been nothing but academic theory. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Riley's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God, she breathed. He's actually admitting it. Ethan Mitchell couldn't have done what I did. David continued, his words gaining momentum, like a man who'd been holding back for years and finally let loose. He was brilliant, yes. But he lacked the business sense, the connections, the ability to actually make things happen in the real world. I took his sketches and turned them into reality. I made his dreams come true. That's worth something. I found my voice finally, standing on shaking legs. You stole his legacy. David's eyes snapped to me. I gave him a legacy. Your brother would have been forgotten, Maya. Now his ideas are changing the world. You should be thanking me. The audacity of it stole my breath. The entire room seemed to inhale as one, shocked into silence by his words. Thank you? My voice came out as a whisper that somehow carried in the silent ballroom. You want me to thank you for stealing my dead brother's life work? For building your career on his grave? For lying to me for 9 years? I didn't lie. David shot back. I just didn't tell you something you didn't need to know. You were broken, Maya, destroyed by grief. I helped you. I took care of you. I gave you a life. You gave me a life built on theft and lies. People were recording now. I could see phone lights everywhere, capturing every word of this nightmare conversation. Part of me wanted to run, to escape this public dissolution of my marriage. But another part, the part that had been planning revenge for 6 months, that had cried listening to Ethan's voice recordings, that had watched David accept praise for work that wasn't his, that part kept me rooted in place. You know what the funny thing is? I said, my voice growing stronger. I didn't even plan this. Tonight, I mean. I had evidence ready. I had a plan. But this? I gestured at the chaos around us. This wasn't me. David's expression flickered with confusion. What are you talking about? I didn't bring Professor Chen here. I didn't contact your old advisor. I pulled the mysterious USB drive from my pocket. I didn't arrange for this to be left under my seat. Someone else knows what you did, David. Someone else has been watching. The color drained from his face. That's impossible. No one knew. I was careful. Apparently not careful enough. I looked at Professor Chen, at Thomas Garrett, at the faces in the crowd. How many of you suspected? How many of you noticed the similarities and said nothing? Professor Chen spoke up. I suspected for years, but without proof, without access to Ethan's original files, I couldn't make formal accusations. When I received an anonymous package 3 weeks ago containing detailed comparisons and time-stamped documents, I knew I had to act. I received similar documents, Thomas Garrett added, along with video files of Ethan's presentations. The evidence was irrefutable. Who sent them? David's voice was desperate now. Who did this? Does it matter? I asked. The truth is out now. Everyone knows what you are. Richard Hastings stepped forward, his face grave. David, I need to speak with you privately. Immediately. Our partnership is suspended pending a full investigation. Richard, please. David reached for him, but the older man stepped back. Don't touch me. I don't associate with thieves. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Thief. In front of the entire architecture community. On live broadcast. Recorded on dozens of phones. David's reputation wasn't just damaged. It was annihilated. Security was moving closer now. Riley pulled at my arm more insistently. Maya, we really need to go. This is going to get ugly. She was right. I could see it in David's eyes. The shift from panic to rage. He started moving toward the stage stairs, toward me, his face twisted with anger. This is your fault, he snarled, pushing past people. You vindictive. 2 security guards intercepted him, but his words carried. I gave you everything. A home. A life. A purpose. You were nothing when I met you. Just a broken girl crying over her dead brother. I made you into something. Each word was a slap. The crowd murmured, shocked by his viciousness. But beneath my hurt, beneath the humiliation of having my marriage publicly destroyed, I felt something else. Certainty. This was who David really was. This angry, entitled man, who believed he deserved credit for other people's work, who thought saving me from grief entitled him to build an empire on my brother's genius. You're right, I said, loudly enough for everyone to hear. I was broken when we met, devastated by losing Ethan. And you took advantage of that. You used my grief as cover while you stole everything my brother worked for. That doesn't make you my savior, David. It makes you a monster. The security guards were pulling him back now, but he fought against them. You'll regret this. I'll sue you for everything. You'll sue me for what? Telling the truth? I pulled out my phone. My hands surprisingly steady now. I have copies of everything. Ethan's original files. Voice recordings. Video of his presentations. Testimony from his classmates, who remember you attending his thesis work. I was going to present it all tonight anyway. Just not like this. But sure. David? Take me to court. Let's put all the evidence on public record. He stopped struggling. The reality of his situation was finally sinking in. His career was over. His reputation destroyed. His marriage imploded. All in the space of 15 minutes. Broadcast live to the architecture world. Riley managed to guide me toward a side exit as the ballroom descended into complete chaos. Journalists were shouting questions. People were arguing. And somewhere behind us, David was still being restrained by security. We burst through the doors into a quiet hallway, the sounds of chaos muffled behind us. Maya, Riley's voice was gentle. Why didn't you tell me? About Ethan's work, about what David did. I only found out 6 months ago. And I needed to be sure, needed to have everything documented before I told anyone. I leaned against the wall, my legs suddenly weak. I thought I'd have more control over how this happened. What are you going to do now? That was the question, wasn't it? My plan had been to expose David, yes, but privately, methodically. Now, the whole world knew. There would be investigations, probably lawsuits, definitely media attention. My quiet life was over. But then again, maybe that quiet life had been a lie anyway, built on David's theft and my ignorance. I'm going to make sure Ethan gets credit for his work, I said firmly. Whatever it takes, that's all I ever wanted. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello? Maya Mitchell. A woman's voice. Professional and crisp. Yes? My name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm a producer for Architecture Today, the documentary series. I'm calling to ask if you'd be willing to tell your brother's story, the real story of Ecosphere's origins. I looked at Riley, who was watching me with concerned eyes. Through the door behind us, I could still hear the chaos of my husband's world ending. In my hand, the mysterious USB drive felt heavy with secrets someone else had uncovered. Yes, I heard myself say. Yes, I'll tell his story. Because that's what this had always been about. Not revenge, though that was sweet. Not destroying David, though he'd destroyed himself. This was about making sure that when people lived in ecosphere communities, when they benefited from revolutionary sustainable housing, they knew the name Ethan Mitchell. They knew my brother had dreamed of a better world and died before seeing it realized. David had stolen 7 years of credit. I was going to spend the rest of my life making sure Ethan's name was restored. The ballroom doors burst open. A tide of journalists and cameras flooded into the hallway. Riley grabbed my hand. "We need to go. Now." We ran toward the parking garage elevator, the sounds of pursuit behind us. My heels clicked against marble floors, my heart pounded in my chest. And behind me, my old life burned to ashes. But ahead, somewhere in the darkness and uncertainty, was the truth. And the truth, I was learning, was worth any amount of chaos. The elevator doors closed just as the first journalist reached us. In the sudden silence, I looked at my reflection in the polished metal doors. I still looked like David Winter's wife, dressed in expensive clothes and jewelry. But that woman was gone. In her place was Ethan Mitchell's sister, and she had work to do. My phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number that had sent the USB drive. "The truth always surfaces. Your brother's legacy is safe now. A friend." I stared at the message, questions swirling. Who was this person? How did they know? Why had they intervened? The elevator doors opened to the parking garage. Riley's car was close, and we rushed toward it, our footsteps echoing in the concrete space. As she fumbled for her keys, I looked back toward the elevator, half expecting David to burst through, still furious, still denying everything. But the doors stayed closed. David was dealing with his own mess now, surrounded by colleagues who would never look at him the same way, holding an award he'd never truly earned. "Where do you want to go?" Riley asked, as we climbed into her car. I thought about our house, the home David and I had shared for 9 years. Every room filled with furniture we'd chosen together, art we'd bought on vacations, photos of happier times that now felt like elaborate lies. I couldn't go back there. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. "Your place?" I asked. "Just for tonight. I need to think." "Of course." She started the engine and pulled out of the parking space. As we drove through the city streets, I watched the lights blur past, thinking about everything that had just happened. My marriage was over. My quiet life was shattered. The media would be relentless. There would be investigations, interviews, probably a trial if David tried to sue me as he'd threatened. But beneath all the fear and uncertainty, I felt something I hadn't felt in 6 months. Relief. The secret was out. The truth was known. Ethan's work would be recognized. "Riley?" I said quietly. "Yeah? Thank you. For being here. For not asking a million questions." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "That's what best friends do. Besides, I have about 1 million questions. But they can wait until you're ready." I smiled despite everything. "I'll tell you everything. The whole story. Just, not tonight." "Not tonight," she agreed. We drove in silence for a while before my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed my mother's number. My stomach dropped. Of course. The ceremony had been broadcast. My parents had probably seen everything. I answered. "Mom? Maya." Her voice was thick with tears. "Sweetheart, we just saw. Is it true? Did that man steal Ethan's work?" Fresh tears sprang to my eyes. "Yes, Mom. It's all true. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I needed to be sure, and I wanted to protect you from—" "Protect us?" My father's voice came through. He must have put me on speaker. "Maya, you've been carrying this alone for months? Knowing what he did?" I had to be certain. I couldn't accuse him without proof. "Does he really have Ethan's designs?" Mom asked. "The things Ethan was working on before he died?" "Yes. Everything. The Ecosphere project is built entirely on Ethan's thesis work. David took it all." Silence on the other end. Then my father's voice, harder than I'd ever heard it. "That son of a bitch. He sat at our table. He ate our food. He comforted us at Ethan's funeral." "I know, Dad. Where are you now? Are you safe? Is he with you?" "I'm with Riley. I'm safe. David is. Well, David is dealing with the fallout at the hotel." "You're leaving him?" "It wasn't a question." "Yes. I can never go back to him after this." "Good." Mom's voice was fierce. "You come home, Maya. Come home to Portland. Your room is still here. We'll help you through this." The offer was tempting. To run back to my childhood home. To let my parents shelter me from the media storm that was surely coming. But I couldn't do that. "I can't, Mom." "Not yet. I need to stay here. There's going to be investigations, interviews. I need to see this through. Make sure Ethan gets proper credit. But I'll visit soon, I promise." "Promise me you'll be careful," Dad said. Men like David don't handle humiliation well. A chill ran through me. He was right. David had looked murderous when security pulled him back. What would he do once he was free? Would he come looking for me? I'll be careful, I promised. I love you both. We love you too, sweetheart. And Maya, we're proud of you. Ethan would be proud too. The call ended and I let my head fall back against the seat, emotionally exhausted. Riley glanced over at me. Your parents saw? Everyone saw. It was broadcast, live. The reality of that hit me fresh. The entire architecture world, maybe more, had watched my marriage implode on television. By morning, it would be all over social media, news sites, everywhere. My phone started buzzing constantly. Text messages, emails, social media notifications. I turned it off. Riley's apartment was in a quiet neighborhood 20 minutes from the hotel. As we pulled into her parking lot, I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. Here, at least, I could hide for a few hours. Think, plan my next moves. We climbed the stairs to her second-floor apartment in silence. Once inside, Riley immediately went to her kitchen. Wine? Coffee? Something stronger? All of the above? I tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. She poured us both generous glasses of red wine and we settled on her couch. For a long moment, we just sat there, drinking in silence. Okay, Riley finally said. I know I said the questions could wait. But I need to understand something. You've known for 6 months? I found boxes in our garage. David had kept copies of everything he'd stolen. I guess he thought they were safe there, that I'd never look through his old office archives. And you've been living with him, sleeping next to him, knowing he'd stolen your brother's work? Every single day. Pretending everything was normal while I gathered evidence, consulted lawyers, built my case. I took a long drink of wine. You have no idea how hard that was. Why didn't you just leave? Confront him immediately? Because I needed proof. Ironclad. Undeniable proof. And I needed a plan to make sure Ethan's name was restored. Not just to tear David down. I paused. Though I'll admit, tearing David down was a very satisfying side benefit. Riley laughed despite herself. I bet. God, Maya. The look on his face when Professor Chen stood up. And then when he actually admitted it? I've never seen anything like that. I haven't either. And that's the weird part, Riley. I didn't plan that. I didn't contact Professor Chen or Thomas Garrett. Someone else did. The mysterious USB drive person? Must be. They sent evidence to multiple people, orchestrated this whole public exposure. I pulled the drive from my purse. I'm almost afraid to see what's on this. Let's look. Riley grabbed her laptop. We plugged in the drive. It contained dozens of folders, meticulously organized. Video files of Ethan presenting his work, audio recordings of him explaining concepts, photos of his original sketches, side-by-side comparisons of his designs and David's claimed innovations, testimony statements from former classmates, even financial records showing David had accessed Ethan's university account in the weeks after his death. This is comprehensive, Riley said, scrolling through files. Whoever put this together spent serious time on it. More than I did, even. I opened a text file, labeled, Read Me First. The message was brief. To Maya Mitchell, your brother's work deserves recognition. I've spent 2 years compiling this evidence. Use it wisely. The architecture community needs to know the truth. A friend of Ethan Mitchell. 2 years, I whispered. Someone's been investigating this for 2 years. Who could it be? I don't know. One of Ethan's old classmates? A professor? Someone in the industry who noticed the similarities? My mind raced through possibilities. The sender clearly had access to MIT records, to Ethan's old presentations and files. They'd tracked David's career, documented every instance of him claiming credit for Ethan's innovations. This wasn't casual interest. This was dedication. Riley scrolled to another folder labeled Additional Evidence. Inside were more recent files, documents I hadn't seen before. Plans for Phase 2 of Ecosphere, all based on designs from Ethan's later notebooks. Notes from David's meetings with investors, where he discussed future innovations that were clearly taken from Ethan's work. Even emails between David and his patent attorney, discussing how to file patents without revealing the work's origins. He was planning to keep stealing, Riley said, disgust in her voice. Phase 2, Phase 3. He was going to mine Ethan's work for years. I know. I found some of this, but not all of it. This mystery person had access to David's private files, somehow. That's technically illegal, isn't it? If they hacked his accounts. Probably. But the evidence itself is real. And some of it came from public records or people's testimony. I thought about the implications. A good lawyer could argue the illegally obtained evidence taints the case, but in the court of public opinion, this is devastating. Riley closed the laptop. So what now? You have all this evidence. Professor Chen and Thomas Garrett have already exposed David publicly. What's your next move? I need to talk to a lawyer. A good one. David threatened to sue me. And even if he doesn't, there's going to be legal fallout from all of this. I need to make sure Ethan's work is properly attributed, maybe even retroactively credited for any patents David filed. That could take years. I don't care how long it takes. Ethan deserves his legacy. My phone, still turned off, sat on the coffee table between us. I dreaded turning it back on, facing the flood of messages and attention. But I couldn't hide forever. When I powered it on, it immediately started buzzing. 53 missed calls, over 200 text messages, hundreds of email notifications. Social media mentions in the thousands. Jesus, Riley breathed, watching over my shoulder. Most of the messages were from reporters requesting interviews. Some were from colleagues and acquaintances, expressing shock or support. A few were from David's friends, angry and accusatory. And there, near the bottom of the text list, was a message from David himself. You destroyed everything. I hope you're happy. This isn't over. The threat in those words was clear. Riley saw my face and grabbed the phone from my hands. Don't read his messages. Not tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out a restraining order or something. But tonight, you need to rest. She was right. I was exhausted, emotionally, and physically drained. The adrenaline that had kept me going through the confrontation was fading, leaving only weariness behind. Riley set me up in her guest room with fresh towels and pajamas. As I changed out of my designer dress, I looked at myself in the mirror. Without the expensive clothes and jewelry, I looked different. Younger, more like the girl I'd been before David. I thought about that girl. The one who'd met a charming architect at Ethan's funeral reception. She'd been so vulnerable, so desperate for comfort. David had seen that vulnerability and exploited it, not just for emotional support, but as cover for his theft. Who would suspect a grieving man was stealing from his girlfriend's dead brother? I'd been the perfect alibi for 9 years, but no more. That girl was gone. In her place was someone harder, angrier, but also clearer about who she was and what she valued. I was Ethan Mitchell's sister, and I would fight for his legacy with everything I had. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David's face on that stage, full of hatred and blame. I heard his words. You were nothing when I met you. Part of me, a small wounded part, wondered if he was right. Had I defined myself only by my grief, by my marriage, by being David's supportive wife? No. I'd been someone before David. I'd been Ethan's little sister, the one he taught to ride a bike and helped with calculus homework. I'd been a college student with dreams of becoming a writer. I'd been someone with opinions and goals and a future that didn't revolve around a man. David hadn't made me. He'd just convinced me I needed making. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and padded into Riley's living room. She was there too, working on her laptop. Can't sleep either, she asked. Too much running through my head. I sat beside her. What are you working on? Research. The story's already breaking everywhere. Architecture blogs, news sites, social media. People are calling it the biggest scandal in the industry in decades. She turned her laptop to show me. Headlines screamed across various websites. Celebrated architect admits to stealing dead students' work. Ecosphere built on stolen designs. Creator confesses. David Winter's career implodes after plagiarism revelation. There were already think pieces, opinion articles, even a hashtag trending. Number justice for Ethan Mitchell. People are calling for his awards to be revoked, Riley said. Multiple architecture firms have already issued statements distancing themselves from him. Richard Hastings publicly canceled their partnership an hour ago. That was fast. The industry is in damage control mode. No one wants to be associated with David now. She scrolled through more articles. But Maya, you need to see this. She pulled up a video. It was David, leaving the hotel after the ceremony, surrounded by reporters and cameras. His face was haggard, his tie loosened, his award nowhere in sight. Mr. Winters, do you have any comment on tonight's revelations? This is a witch hunt orchestrated by my vindictive wife, Ethan Mitchell's work was theoretical, unfinished. I brought it to life. That's not theft, that's evolution. But you admitted on stage to using his designs without credit. I was ambushed. I said things in anger that were taken out of context. My lawyers will be issuing a full statement. This is slander, defamation, and I will sue everyone involved. Including your wife? Especially my wife. The video ended. Riley and I looked at each other. He's going to fight this, she said. Let him. I have the evidence. He admitted his guilt on live television. There are hundreds of witnesses. But he's right about one thing. This is going to get ugly. Legal battles, media circuses, probably years of fighting. I don't care. And I meant it. I'd spent 6 months preparing for this. I'd lived with a lie for 9 years. Whatever came next, I could handle it. Riley closed her laptop. For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. And I think Ethan would be so proud of you. Tears stung my eyes. I hope so. I just want people to know his name, to understand how brilliant he was. He died so young, with so much potential. David stole his chance to change the world, but he is changing the world through his designs, and now everyone will know they're his designs. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights through Riley's window. Somewhere out there, David was plotting his counterattack, planning his lawsuits, spinning his story, but I had the truth on my side, and after tonight, so did the rest of the world. My phone buzzed with a new email. From Jennifer Walsh, the documentary producer who'd called earlier. The subject line read, Ethan Mitchell's Legacy. A proposal. I opened it. She wanted to do a full documentary about Ethan's work, his life, and how David had stolen it all. She wanted interviews with me, with Ethan's professors, with classmates. She wanted to showcase Ethan's original designs, let people see the genius behind Ecosphere, and she wanted to examine how the architecture industry allowed this theft to happen for so long. This could be good, Riley said, reading over my shoulder. Get the real story out there, control the narrative. Or it could turn into a circus, exploiting Ethan's death for ratings. Maybe. But if you don't tell the story, someone else will. At least this way, you have some control. She was right. The story was out now, spiraling across the internet, being discussed and debated by thousands of people who'd never met Ethan. I could either hide and let others define my brother's legacy, or I could step forward and fight for the truth. I stared at Jennifer Walsh's email proposal, the cursor blinking in the darkness of Riley's living room. Outside, the city was beginning to wake up, delivery trucks rumbling past, early morning joggers starting their routes. Inside, my entire life had been dismantled in the span of a few hours. I'll do it, I said finally. The documentary. But on my terms. I want editorial input. I want to make sure Ethan is honored. Not just used as a tragic backstory for drama. Riley nodded. Smart. I can help you negotiate the contract. My journalism contacts can recommend entertainment lawyers. I typed a response to Jennifer, outlining my conditions. Within minutes, she replied agreeing to everything. The architecture world was hungry for this story. And I was the only one who could tell it properly. By 6 a.m., Riley's phone started ringing. Her editor at the Tribune wanted her to write the exclusive story. Major news networks were requesting interviews. The Today Show, Good Morning America, even international press. The scandal had exploded overnight, becoming front-page news everywhere. You don't have to do any of this, Riley said gently. You can refuse all interviews, stay private. No. My voice was firm. Hiding won't help Ethan. I need to speak up. Tell people who he was, what he created. Otherwise, this just becomes gossip about a celebrity architect's fall from grace. At 7:30, my phone rang. My lawyer? Patricia Chen, whom I'd hired 3 months ago when I first started planning my case. Maya, I saw everything on the news. Are you safe? Where are you? I'm with a friend. I'm fine. David's lawyers already called me. They're threatening a defamation lawsuit, claiming you orchestrated a conspiracy to destroy his reputation. I almost laughed. I have time-stamped files proving everything. He admitted it on live television. Let them try. They're also claiming you had no legal right to Ethan's intellectual property, that his work belonged to MIT as student research. That made my blood run cold. Can they do that? Can they claim Ethan's work belongs to the university? It's complicated. Student work often does belong to the institution, but thesis projects typically remain the student's intellectual property. We'll need to review Ethan's enrollment agreements. Check MIT's policies from 7 years ago. She paused. But Maya, here's the thing, even if MIT technically owned the IP, David never went through proper channels to use it. He just stole it. That's still theft. Still plagiarism. What about the patents David filed? The ones based on Ethan's designs? Those can be challenged. It'll take time and money. But with the evidence you have, we have a strong case for having them invalidated. Or, at minimum, amended to credit Ethan as the original creator. How long? Years, probably. Patent disputes are notoriously slow, but the court of public opinion has already ruled in your favor. David's reputation is destroyed. No firm will work with him. No client will trust him. You've already won the war that matters. Had I? It didn't feel like winning. It felt like standing in the rubble of my life, trying to figure out how to rebuild. After the call, Riley made breakfast while I showered. Standing under the hot water, I let myself cry for the first time since the ceremony. Not for David, he deserved everything happening to him. But for Ethan, for the life he should have lived, the recognition he should have received while he was alive to appreciate it. And maybe a little for myself, for the 9 years I'd lost to a lie. When I emerged, Riley had coffee ready and had laid out clothes she thought would work for interviews. The Today Show wants you on tomorrow morning, CNN tonight, and about 50 other outlets. Tomorrow? My stomach churned. That's fast. The story's hot now. If you want to control the narrative, you need to move while people are paying attention. She was right. I agreed to the Today Show and CNN, but told Riley to decline the rest for now. I needed to pace myself, not burn out in the first wave of media attention. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your email. Important. A friend. The mysterious helper again. I opened my email to find a message with no text, just an attachment labeled Final Evidence. The file contained something I hadn't seen before. A video recording. Date stamped 3 days after Ethan's death. In it, David sat in what I recognized as Ethan's MIT apartment, going through Ethan's computer. The angle suggested it was from a laptop webcam, probably recording automatically or triggered by motion. In the video, David methodically copied files to a USB drive, muttering to himself, "This is brilliant. This is actually fucking brilliant." He never got to use it anyway. Someone should. It deserves to see the light of day. Then he paused, looking directly at the camera without realizing it was recording. "I'll make this mean something, Ethan. I promise. It won't just rot in some archive." The rationalization of a thief who believed he was doing something noble. The video ended. I sat frozen, staring at the screen. This was the smoking gun. Undeniable proof of the exact moment David stole Ethan's work. With this, there could be no legal defense, no claim of independent development, no argument about inspiration versus theft. "Riley," my voice came out strangled. "Look at this." She watched the video, her expression hardening with each second. "Holy shit. Where did this come from?" "My mysterious friend. The one who's been sending evidence." "But how? How would they have access to this? This is from Ethan's personal computer." "I don't know. Unless." An idea was forming, impossible, but persistent. Unless someone else had access to Ethan's computer that day. Someone who set up the webcam to record. Someone who's been sitting on this evidence for 7 years, waiting. Waiting for what? For the right moment. For David to become famous enough that exposing him would actually matter. I thought about the timeline. 2 years ago, Ecosphere started getting serious attention. That's when my mysterious friend started compiling evidence, according to their note. They waited until David was at his peak, so the fall would be devastating. That's kind of brilliantly vindictive. It's strategic. I forwarded the video to Patricia. This ends any legal defense David might mount. You can't argue your way out of video evidence. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. Riley helped me draft talking points for interviews. Patricia worked on legal strategies. My parents called 3 more times, each call reassuring me. They supported whatever I decided to do. By evening, I was exhausted but wired. The CNN interview was scheduled for 9 p.m. Riley did my makeup, helped me choose a simple blue blouse that would read well on camera. We set up in her living room with good lighting, laptop positioned for the video call. At exactly 9 p.m., Anderson Cooper's face appeared on screen. Miss Mitchell, thank you for joining us during what must be an incredibly difficult time. Thank you for having me. Let's start with the basic facts. Your husband, celebrated architect David Winters, built his career on designs stolen from your late brother, Ethan Mitchell. When did you first discover this? I took a breath, centering myself. 6 months ago, I was cleaning our garage and found boxes of archived materials from David's early career. Inside were my brother's original designs. His notes, his calculations, everything that later became Ecosphere was there, in Ethan's handwriting, dated years before David claimed to have developed these concepts. Your brother died 7 years ago, correct? Yes. Motorcycle accident, 3 days before his thesis defense at MIT. He was 26. Can you tell us about Ethan? Who was he beyond these designs? This was what I'd been waiting for. The chance to make Ethan real, not just a plot point in a scandal. Ethan was passionate about making the world better. He grew up watching our father struggle with a small business, seeing good people unable to afford decent housing. That's what drove him, the belief that architecture could solve real problems for real people. He wasn't designing buildings for the wealthy elite. He was designing communities for families who needed affordable, sustainable places to live. My voice caught. He was also the best big brother anyone could ask for. He taught me to ride a bike, helped me with my homework, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. When he died, I lost not just a brother, but my best friend. And David Winters attended your brother's funeral? Yes, we'd been dating about 2 months at that point. He was supportive, or seemed to be. He helped me sort through Ethan's apartment, pack up his belongings. I paused, letting the implication hang, including his computer and research materials. Materials he later used to build his career. Yes, Miss Mitchell, at the awards ceremony last night, your husband actually admitted to using your brother's work, but he claimed he was doing something good, bringing your brother's vision to life. How do you respond to that? I'd prepared for this question. Theft doesn't become noble just because you do something with what you stole. David didn't have my brother's permission. He didn't credit Ethan. He built a fortune and a reputation by claiming someone else's genius as his own. That's not honoring someone's vision, that's grave robbing. Anderson nodded. We've obtained a statement from MIT. They confirm that Ethan Mitchell's thesis work contained the core concepts that later appeared in Ecosphere. They're launching their own investigation into how this was allowed to happen. I'm glad. This isn't just about David. It's about an industry that didn't ask questions when a junior architect suddenly produced revolutionary designs. It's about systems that failed to protect a student's intellectual property after his death. What do you want to happen now? I want my brother's name on his work. Every Ecosphere community, every patent, every article that discusses these innovations should credit Ethan Mitchell as the creator. David can be credited with implementation if he must be credited with anything. But the ideas, the vision, the genius, that was all Ethan. And your marriage? Over. I'm filing for divorce. David's lawyers have threatened to sue you for defamation. Are you concerned? No. The truth isn't defamation. I have evidence, witnesses, and now the entire architecture community backing me up. Let him sue. It'll only give me another platform to present the facts. The interview continued for another 20 minutes, covering the timeline, the evidence, the mysterious helper who'd provided additional documentation. Anderson was professional but sympathetic, giving me space to honor Ethan while also holding David accountable. When it ended, Riley hugged me. You did great. You were clear, composed, and you made Ethan real for people. That's what matters. My phone immediately exploded with messages. Supportive texts from friends I hadn't heard from in years. Emails from architecture students thanking me for exposing the truth. Even messages from some of David's former colleagues, apologizing for not recognizing the theft sooner. And one message from David. You just destroyed any chance of settlement. I'll bury you in legal fees. You'll regret this. I blocked his number. Patricia could handle any legitimate legal communication. I was done letting David have access to me. The next morning, I was up at 5 a.m. for the Today Show. Hair and makeup team came to Riley's apartment, transforming me into someone camera-ready. I wore a simple black dress, Ethan's old MIT class ring on a chain around my neck. Savannah Guthrie was warmer than Anderson Cooper, more personal in her questions. Maya, millions of people are learning about your brother today. What would you want them to know about Ethan beyond his brilliant designs? I touched the ring at my throat. I'd want them to know he was kind, that he believed in using his talents to help others, that he died too young, with so much still to give the world. But mostly, I'd want them to know that when they live in an Ecosphere community, When they benefit from affordable, sustainable housing, they're living in Ethan's dream. He may not be here to see it, but his vision is making life better for real people. That would have meant everything to him. Beautiful. And incredibly moving. Savannah paused. There's been an interesting development overnight. Would you like to address it? I tensed, unsure what she meant. What development? Richard Hastings, the legendary architect who was set to partner with your husband, has issued a statement. He's proposing that all ecosphere projects be rebranded as Mitchell Communities, in your brother's honor. He's also establishing a scholarship fund for architecture students at MIT in Ethan's name. Were you aware of this? Tears sprang to my eyes. I hadn't known. No. That's incredible. That's exactly the kind of legacy Ethan deserves. He's calling on the architecture community to contribute. Within 12 hours, the fund has already raised over $2 million. I couldn't speak, could only press my hand to my mouth as emotion overwhelmed me. Savannah gave me a moment, then continued gently. The architecture world is rallying around your brother's legacy. Students are wearing numbered Justice for Ethan shirts. Firms are reviewing their IP policies. This has become a watershed moment for the industry. When the interview ended, I thanked Savannah and the crew, then collapsed in Riley's guest room. The emotional toll of the past 24 hours was catching up. I'd barely slept, barely eaten, running on adrenaline and anger. Riley brought me tea and toast. You need to rest. No more interviews today. Agreed. I sipped the tea, feeling the warmth spread through me. Did you see what Richard Hastings did? I did. It's perfect. Ethan's name will be on every community. Forever. That's more than David ever gave him. My phone rang. Patricia. Maya, David's lawyers just called. They want to settle. What? Already? The video you sent me, the one showing David stealing the files, destroyed their case. They know they can't win in court. They're offering a full divorce settlement. David keeps the house but you get half of all assets, and he agrees not to contest any efforts to recredit Ethan's work. What about his counter-lawsuit? Dropped. They're also including a public apology from David, though I suspect his lawyers wrote it, and he'll hate every word. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to drag David through court. Make him suffer through a public trial. But another part, the exhausted part, just wanted it over. What do you recommend? Take the settlement. You've won what matters, Ethan's recognition. David's career is over, regardless of whether you accept this. Fighting in court for years will only drain you emotionally and financially. This way, you're free to move on. Okay. Draw up the papers. There's one more thing. The mystery person who sent you evidence? They identified themselves. Their lawyer contacted me this morning. My heart raced. Who is it? Professor Thomas Garrett, Ethan's thesis advisor. Apparently, he'd set up the webcam system in Ethan's apartment as a security measure after there'd been thefts in the building. When Ethan died, Professor Garrett packed up the computer, but the webcam uploaded its last recording to cloud storage. He didn't check it until a year later, when he heard David presenting work that sounded suspiciously like Ethan's. Why did he wait so long to expose it? He tried. He brought concerns to MIT, but without concrete proof beyond his memory of Ethan's work, nothing happened. So he waited, compiled evidence, documented every instance of David using Ethan's innovations. He wanted an airtight case before going public. I need to thank him. He wants to meet you. He's in town for meetings with MIT's legal team. Are you up for it? Yes, absolutely. That afternoon, I met Professor Garrett at a quiet cafe near campus. He was in his 60s, with kind eyes and the slightly rumpled appearance of someone who cared more about ideas than image. Maya, he stood when I approached. Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for everything you did for Ethan. And for me. We sat. He ordered coffee with shaking hands. I failed your brother. I should have protected his work better. Should have documented everything. Should have seen what David was doing sooner. You couldn't have known. None of us could. I suspected. Even at the time, I thought David asked too many detailed questions about Ethan's research. But he seemed genuinely interested, supportive. I never imagined. He trailed off. That he was scouting material to steal. Yes. He pulled out a folder. I have something for you. Ethan's original thesis drafts, the ones he turned in before he died. MIT kept copies. I thought you might want them. I opened the folder with reverent hands. Ethan's handwriting, his sketches, his brilliant mind preserved on paper. Thank you. This means everything. He was the most talented student I ever had. what he could have accomplished. Professor Garrett's voice broke. I'm sorry. Even after 7 years, it's hard. I understand. I miss him every day. We talked for over an hour, sharing memories of Ethan, discussing the evidence Professor Garrett had compiled, planning how to ensure Ethan's legacy was properly honored. By the end, I felt lighter. Someone else had loved my brother's work, had fought to protect it. I wasn't alone in this. Over the next 2 weeks, everything moved quickly. David signed the settlement papers without contest. The house went on the market. His awards were officially revoked by the National Architecture Foundation. Several patents were amended to credit Ethan as the primary inventor, with David listed only as implementer. The documentary began filming. Jennifer Walsh was respectful, focusing on Ethan's life and work rather than just the scandal. She interviewed Professor Garrett, Ethan's former classmates, even tracked down one of his college roommates, who had old videos of Ethan excitedly explaining his designs. Watching those videos broke my heart and healed it simultaneously. Ethan alive, animated, passionate, exactly as I remembered him. The episode aired 3 months later, a 2-hour special titled Stolen Genius, the Ethan Mitchell story. It won an Emmy for Outstanding Documentary. More importantly, it sparked nationwide conversations about intellectual property protection, ethics in architecture, and how the industry treats young innovators. The Ethan Mitchell Scholarship Fund reached $10 million. Every year, it would fund 5 architecture students at MIT. Students who showed Ethan's commitment to sustainable, affordable design. The first ecosphere community to be completed after the scandal was officially renamed Mitchell Gardens. At the dedication ceremony, I stood with my parents, with Professor Garrett, with Riley, and watched as they unveiled a plaque. Mitchell Gardens, built on the revolutionary designs of Ethan Mitchell, 1993 to 2018. His vision of affordable, sustainable housing for all continues to change lives. My mother cried. My father put his arm around her. I stood there feeling Ethan's presence, imagining how proud he would be. David disappeared from public life. Last I heard, he was working for a small firm in another state, no longer designing but managing projects. His reputation never recovered. Some people thought his fall was too harsh, that he'd been punished enough. I didn't agree, but I also didn't care. David was no longer my concern. 6 months after the ceremony, I started writing. Not just about Ethan and the scandal, but about other young innovators who'd been exploited. Other instances of stolen credit in architecture. And beyond. Riley helped me pitch articles. I became a voice for protecting intellectual property, for giving credit where it was due. I also went back to school, enrolled in MIT's architecture program. I'd never had Ethan's genius, but I had his passion for helping people. I could learn the technical skills. Professor Garrett agreed to mentor me. On what would have been Ethan's 34th birthday, I visited his grave. The headstone had been updated. Ethan Mitchell, beloved brother and visionary architect. His dreams built a better world. I placed flowers and sat on the grass. I did it, Ethan. Everyone knows your name now. Everyone knows what you created. You're not forgotten. You never will be. The wind rustled through the trees, warm and gentle. For the first time since his death, I felt at peace. Justice hadn't brought Ethan back. Nothing could. But it had restored his legacy, given him the recognition he deserved, ensured that his work would continue helping people for generations. That was enough. It had to be enough. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed. An email from the dean at MIT. They wanted to establish an Ethan Mitchell Chair in Sustainable Architecture, a permanent professorship dedicated to continuing his work. I smiled through tears and typed back, Ethan would be honored. So am I. The fight was over. Ethan had won, and in winning, so had I. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.